Good evening, everyone. Tonight's shiur, Lilu Nishmalavi Marido, Berme Renuan Halevi, Imim Marati Rochel Bad Harav Michael. And to this Shabbos, we have the privilege of reading the parsha of Chayay Sara, which seemingly is misnamed because in the Chayay Sara we read about the death of Sarah, as well as later on in the parsha, the death of Avram Avinu, as well as the death of Yishmael. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about the beginning of the parsha. Talks about how Avram negotiates for a burial place for Sarah, and that's what we're going to focus on tonight. So let's go right to the source sheet, and away we go. We're in the first parak of the parsha, basically parak Chav Gimel, which deals with a transaction between Avraham and a gentleman by the name of Ephron, who we're going to be introduced to. But the parsha, I'm just going to start with the first two psukim just to give us the background of the parsha. Chayay Sara, Chayay Sara. The years of the life of Sarah are 127 years. And then again, interestingly enough, it repeats the words Chayay Sara twice in the opening parsha, the life of Sarah. Talmud Sarah, Sarah dies. But Kiryat Arba tells us where she dies. He Chevron gives us the other name of the city of Kiryat Arba, which is Be'eretz Canaan, in the land of Canaan. Avram comes from wherever he arrives, and he comes to eulogize Sarah and to cry for her. And then we have this. We're going to have a dialogue between Avraham and the other party, who is, we're going to see in a minute, is going to change as we go through the dialogue. So, Avram rises from in front of his the person he has to bury, and he speaks to the children of Chet, the sons of Chet, and says the following: I am a stranger, but I am a dweller in your midst. Please give me a burial place, a land that I can own as a burial place, together amongst you, in order that I can bury my dead from before me. Now the Bnei Chet answer Avram and say the following to him: hear us. Firstly, they call him Adoni, our master. A prince of God you have become in our midst. In the choicest one of our burial spots, you may bury your dead. Ish mimenu, no one from among us, no person among us will withhold their burial place from you burying your dead. Avram isn't satisfied yet with this offer, and he gets up. So he bows down. Now we are introduced to another group, or maybe the same group with a different name, but it says the Am Haaretz Livnei Chet. Now you have to understand that even though we today colloquially use the term Am Haaretz to refer to somebody who may not be up to snuff on their religious observance, Am Haaretz in biblical Hebrew generally refers to a town council or some type of governing body. So clearly Avram is now talking to the Bnei Chet, but it's also the Am Haaretz. So whatever that means. By the very timely morning, Avram speaks to them and says the following: Yesh nafshechem. Thank you for your offer that I can have any burial place I want, but if you really want to, that I will be able to bury my dead. Shemauni, please heed me. Ufigu uli, and if Goa means to a number of different things, but here means to introduce me, be Ephron ben Sochar, to Ephron son of Sochar, v'yitan li, and he should give to me at Mi'aran HaMachpelah Asher Lo, this cave of Machpelah that belongs to him, Asher B'Ksei Sadehu, which is at the end of his field. V'chesed malei yitnenu li, I wanted to give it to me for full price, b'tochachem, amongst you, b'achuzat cover. Now remember, Avram's offer at this point is to buy the cave only, and he wants to pay it for full price. But interestingly enough, he doesn't say v'yim karli. He says v'yitenli. He will give it to me. We're going to see how the parshanim, or at least a couple of the parshanim, deal with this whole transaction and the way it's phrased. because it's not phrased normally. Normally they say, hey, I want to buy the field, buy this cave from him. He doesn't say I'm going to buy the cave. He says he's going to give it to me and I'll pay full price for it. Ephron happens to be sitting amongst the Bnei Chet. Ephron answers, responds to Avram in the ears of all of the Bnei Chet. In other words, they're all sitting there. Remember, he's presumably at the city gate where business gets transacted. And it's what's going to say in front of all of the people who are sitting at the gate. Now, remember, this doesn't just mean they're sitting and spaziering or whatever. This means that they're sitting in session, either as a town council meeting or they are conducting other types of business. Lo adoni shma'eni, my master, listen to me. No, that's not the way it's going to be. I give you the field. And through owning the field, you will have the cave that is included in the field. I will give it to you. In front of all of the people of my nation, I've given it to you. Go bury your dead. Now here Avram bows to again the Am Haaretz. Doesn't mention the Bnei Chet, but just mentions the Am Haaretz. So he speaks to Ephron in the ears of the Am Haaretz. As I said, let's translate that as town council. Says the following: I want you just to please listen to me. Natati kesef hasodeh kach mimeni. Fine, I'll give you the purchase price of the field. Take it from me. And then once I've paid you for the field, don't give it to me as a gift. Once I've paid you for the field, then I'll be happy to bury my dead there. Vayan Ephron at Avraham le'mor. So Ephron answers him and says to him, Adoni shema'eni, my master, listen. Eretz arba me'ot shekel kesef, the land that's value is 400 pieces of silver. Between us, why are we dickering over something that has very little value to either of us in a financial perspective? Very, very important how much value it has to Avram because he wants to use it as a burial place. But Ephron is saying, come on, we're both wealthy. It's like two guys, cattle ranchers are arguing over one little cow or something. This is ridiculous. Go bury your dead. What difference does it make whether you pay me now, you pay me later, or you don't pay me? It doesn't matter. This is a pittance between the two of us, he's saying. Avram answers, listens to Ephron. First, he pays out to Ephron at the price that he mentions that he just mentioned, 400 shekels of kesef over la socher. He gives it to, in other words, this is all money that is accepted at top dollar, clean, good money. And then it tells us, Vayakam ste Ephron, Asher Machpelah, the field of Ephron, literally, Vayakam, literally rises up, Asher Machpelah, which is located in, I guess I don't know whether it's called Machpelah is the name of the field or the name of the area, but it has the Machpelah, the field of Ephron, which was in Machpelah, Shelifnei Mamre, which is before the region of Mamre, Hasodeh, the field, the Amara Sherbo, and the cave, and all the trees of the field, that is within the boundaries of the field. In other words, Avram doesn't just buy the land, he buys the land, the produce, the field, the cave in the corner, everything he buys, the whole thing. And it's as it says in verse 18, it becomes Avram purchases it in front of the eyes of Bnei Chet, in front of all those that pass through the city gate. And then finally, the last verse here is then Avram buries his wife Sarah, to the cave that's located in the field of Machpelah, which is near Mamre, or in Mamre, which is Hebron, the Eretz Canaan. And finally, last verse, again, once again, we have the same phrase of Vayakam Asadeh, the field rises up, and the cave that's in it becomes to Avram as a burial plot, purchased from the Bnei Chet. This verse of describing of this Marat Machpelah as being purchased from Bnei Chet occurs throughout Sefer Bereshit. Whenever we mention Marat Machpelah, it mentions that Avram bought the field from Bnei Chet. We're going to see that when they bury Avraham later on in this week's parsha, we see it in a couple of weeks when we bury Yitzchak. We see it later when Yaakov is commanding his children about his burial. Sarah is the only one of the matriarchs who we describe her burial in Machpelah, even though Rivka is going to be buried there, Leah is going to be buried there, and each of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are going to be described as being buried in Machpelah. We'll see it later on in Bereshit. But anyway, let's go to. We're going to skip. I skipped Rashi for today. We're going to go right to Ramban. Okay. Now Ramban wants to talk about this whole again. Is going to talk about the whole transaction and primarily the negotiation. What is the purpose of this whole negotiation? Why does the Torah have to give us this whole long detail? Why couldn't the Torah just say Avram goes to Ephron, buys the field, and buries Sarah? Why do we need this entire chapter of this whole dialogue between Avraham and Bnei Chet first, the Am Haaretz, and then Ephron? So Raman starts off by telling us very simply something we might not understand. I mean, I don't know what the minhag was in Spain in the 13th century, but clearly today our minhagim of how we provide burial is not the same as it was 4,000 years ago. So Hayah minhag. So Raman wants to start off by telling us what the custom was. Liot lahem batei kfarot, that every person had their own burial plot. Each Leveit Avotav, each family had their own cemetery. There was no communal city cemetery for everybody. However, Usteik for Achat, Yikbrubo Kol Hagerim. If you were a resident, you probably had your own family plot. If you were a stranger in town, you were buried in the communal cemetery. So there were two different types of cemeteries, Raman says. So Avram approaches the Bnei Chet, and he says the following: Ani gar me'eretz acheretz. I am a stranger from a different land. And therefore, I do not have an ancestral plot here in this land. Now, I've come to dwell amongst you. I am not just coming and passing through as a tradesman or a temporary person. I'm coming to live here. I want to be granted full citizenship rights and be allowed to buy a parcel of land that I can use as a family burial plot. That's what he's asking for. And that's why he says, Ger, I'm a stranger. I don't own one yet, but Toshav, I'm coming now to become a citizen. I want full citizenship rights to be able to buy a family burial plot. But since he used the language of tenu, of please give me instead of sell me, they thought their original response was based on the premise that he was asking them that somebody should give it to him as a gift rather than as a sale. The Anuoto, and their response to him was, we don't consider you a stranger or an ordinary citizen. We consider you a prominent citizen, a king. God has given you rulership over us, and we and all of our land, all of our property, are servants to you. So therefore, you can choose any burial plot that you'd like, bury your dead there. And whatever burial plot you choose will be your burial plot forever. Nobody will say no to you. Because we have such high regard for you, Avraham Avinu, nobody's going to say no to you. Anybody will accept whatever piece of property you want. They'll be glad to give you to use, and they'll be honored. It sounds like from here they'll be honored to allow you to use their burial plot. Okay, but it'll still be their burial plot. It may become yours, but it'll be still they'll have the ownership thereof. So Avram answers that if you really want to do this, what does that mean, Tama? What is he saying? Ani lo ekbor meti bekever acher. It's very nice that you want to let me use any one of your burial places to bury my wife. I'm not interested. I don't want to bury my wife in somebody else's property. If you want to be allowed to bury my dead, Pigu Libi Ephron, let me meet or intercede with me on my behalf before Ephron. Because he happens to own a field that has a cave in the corner of the field, at the edge of the field. And he doesn't use this cave, which is a natural location for a burial plot. He doesn't use it as a burial plot for his ancestors. He uses this whole field as a field to plant. He doesn't use it as a burial plot. I want to buy it from him. The Tam Milfanai, and I'd like to buy it in front of me. If you're not going to provide me with a piece of land to bury my wife, I'm going to have to bury her in a sarcophagus. And I really don't want to do that. I want to bury her in the ground. Oh, or perhaps the reason what it means is that Avram is suggesting, since that she's already passed away, I'm not buying this, as an advance for 5 years, 10 years down the road when she passed away. I should have a burial plot already bought. She's already passed away, and I need to buy the burial plot right now. That's what he said. That's why Milfanai immediately, they should realize that he wants to do it immediately. Why does he ask Piguli, intercede for me? Here's why. Ramban suggests. Ephron is a wealthy individual. He's honored among the people. He's one of the upper crust here. Kasher Amar, as he says, what's the proof that he's from the upper crust? He says, come on, what's a little 400 piddly kesef between you and me? Why are we even arguing over this? However, Ephron, because he's a wealthy individual, he probably has no need or no desire to sell something he inherited from his ancestors. In other words, if this piece of property is his family, is his ancestral property, he doesn't want to sell it. K'inyan Navot HaYisraeli, as we see many years later with Achav and Navot, that Navot says, hey, this is my family plot. I don't care that it's right next to your palace. I don't want to sell it to you. Al Kain, lo halach Avram elav. Avram doesn't immediately doesn't go to Ephron and say, hey, I'd like to buy this piece of property from you. He goes through an intermediary. Okay, lo halach Avram elav lo mechir. So Avram doesn't go and immediately offer and say, hey, how much you want to sell this for? He's not interested. Therefore, he asks the Bnei Chet, the other, probably maybe people who are more closer to Ephron, that they should intercede on his behalf as negotiators to help him out to be able to close this deal. So in other words, instead of thinking, I'll just go and I'll find whatever his price is and pay it, he says, maybe they'll be my intercessors, and then they'll smooth the way, which is the way, if you're not known in the city, you go to a real estate agent, you go to an intermediary, somebody who knows the territory. That's what Avram is doing, according to Ramban. The Yitenli, now it's interesting, he should give me my machpelah, and I'm going to give him the money. Now, why is I'm going to give it to him? I will consider it as though it's a gift. I will feel honored if he's willing to let me buy it, even though I'm paying full price. I'll treat it as though it's a gift. It's a gift that he's willing to sell it to me as the gift, not the property itself. The fact that he is willing to enter into a transaction with me, Avram says that's already what I'm looking for. The alkain, and therefore lo hiskir lashon mechira. Selling the term sale never appears in the whole chapter. It doesn't say Avram offers to buy it or Avram is selling it. It doesn't say that. It says he gives it to him. And he says he gives other cases of where, even though somebody is actually buying something, they feel as though it's being given as a gift. When Am Yisrael is traveling in the desert and they're trying to negotiate to buy food and water, they don't use the language of mechira, of buying and selling. They say, "You'll give me water, and I'll give you money." It's a barter. It's not a sale per se. Shamayim anitunim matana ein bahem kesef. That you will give me water as a gift, and I'll give you silver as a gift. Oh, or perhaps Ramban says, maybe I'm reading too much into this. That's just the flowery language of negotiation at the time for transacting a real estate transaction. Maybe I'm overstepping this, but that's one way to look at it. He says, Marana Machpelah. Now Rashi says, what is Marana Machpelah? This cave of Machpelah. Why is it called Machpelah? From lashon of kafal, of double. Rashi says, Bayit ve'aliyah gabav. It's like it was a cave and a cave above it, like a double cave. Davar acher, and Rashi, he quotes, Ramban quotes Rashi, and another interpretation of the word machpelah, of double, shekfula bezugot, it's buried, it's doubled with pairs of people who are going to be buried there. And Ramban says that can't be where the word machpelah comes from. Machpelah can't be something that in the future there are going to be four pairs of couples, four couples who are going to be buried there. Later on, it's going to say the field of Ephron, which is in Machpelah, which seems to imply Machpelah is the name of either the region, the block, whatever it was that the field is located. The ain't sorach l'lakesh tal m'shem ha'makom. Okay, it's nice midrash that later on that it gets this, but that's not the name. The name Machpelah, Ramban says that's the name of the it was given before. It's not a name given because of the future, and you don't have to go search the reason for why it was called Machpelah. It was called Machpelah. However, Ramban's going to continue on quote a midrash. Will be Breshit Rabbah. Amru. The reason it was called Machpelah is shekafal HaKadosh Baruch Hu komato shel Adam HaRishon v'kavru b'tocha. That Avram literally folded up kiviyachol Adam HaRishon by his height because he was too tall to be buried anywhere. He folded him up and buried him there. Okay, and that's why it's called Machpelah, of the folds. The Aldatam hayakol makoma hu nikra kain me'olam. The people who lived there said, it's always been called Machpelah. I don't know why. Don't ask me why. Machpelah is its name. What do you want from us? The Heimlo Yadu Tamo, and they did not have any understanding of the reason why it was called Machpelah. Ki Ephron, obviously, Ki Ephron b'nei sadeh machalo hakol al dato she'ein sham kaver. Because when Ephron sells it to him, he has no idea there's somebody buried there. He's selling it as though whatever the price of this field is, based on what it's going to grow. That's the way fields were priced. Fields are priced, and we see that in the Torah in Buchotai, that a field is priced based on how much it's going to yield. That's the value of a field, is how fertile it is, how much space it has to grow crops. That's the value of the field, and he doesn't assume that there's a person buried in it. However, behold, Avram's intent was only to buy the cave, cubic se'asadeh, because it's at the side of the field. And let Ephron keep the field, let him plant whatever he wants. But Ephron sort of hints to him and tries to give him a little, it's not quite right. That he should give him the field and the cave. It's not appropriate. It is not suitable. Ephron is hinting to Avram, you don't want to have your burial place in somebody else's field. It's not right. It's not right. You're a mechubad guy. You're an honorable guy. You should own the field that your burial place is in. The Avraham samach b'chach v'konako v'damim shizkilo. And Avram was very happy that he was willing, because Avram figured he would, to sell the cave that he doesn't use, he might be willing. But to sell the whole field, it's a productive field that he's using to grow food, maybe he won't want to sell it. So when Avram heard that he was willing to sell the whole field as well as the cave, he was very happy. He said, good, pay it, done deal. The Tamle ne b'nei ami. Now, why does all this have to take place in front of the whole place? Lemor, hine kol amheina. Everybody's here. V'heim hayodim v'hoedim. They heard this whole discussion. They are witness to the whole transaction. Therefore, This deal is binding. There's no trickery here, and there's no going back on this deal. Once we sign the deal, it's done. And you can bury your dead there. Now you can bury your dead there. Why? It's a signed, sealed, delivered. It's yours. I can't take it back. So you can do whatever you want with the field. The Avram lo asachen. Avram did not want to take it and then pay for it. Take it, bury Sarah, and then pay for it. Ki gam acharei shepara kesef malay. Even after he paid full price, hichzik tchila basodeh uvamara. First, he did an act of kinyan, of taking possession of the field before he buries Sarah. He wants it to be known that this is his field before he turns it into a burial place. Avram lo asaken. He didn't go bury Sarah, then pay for it, and then take possession. He pays. Even after he's paid, he takes full possession of the field, the cave. He establishes that everybody should understand that this is his, and he takes possession of it. And he serves up all the tradesmen, everybody who's living there. Only after he's taken full possession of the field, by showing that he has ownership thereof, then he buries Sarah. Okay. Avram says to Ephron, I don't want to take it for free. I want to pay you, please. Shiur im ata im tishbeni. Please, he's begging him to listen to him. If only you listen to me. The double language, not instead of imata shmeini, just listen to me. Please listen to me. Is to strengthen the language here. Where we have again a double lashon of surah. Come over here, come here. Hatov tov ata. Are you any better? All these things where somebody repeats a word for emphasis. Etc. Another one, another example. Okay. Okay. All of these are just examples where we use this double language. O Yomar, or perhaps it means the following. If you really are meaning what you say, and you'll listen to me, it gives another possibility. One possibility is he's doubling the language for emphasis. The other is he's saying, I want to make sure that you're not just saying this and you really don't mean it. So let's make sure we mean it. And he gives another bunch of examples of that. The Tam. Now, why 400 shekel kesef? Why is it 400? Why does this price come from? Al das Onklus, she shavakain. According to Onklus, this was the value of the field. What Onklus is trying to say is that this size field had a fixed price. That was the way fields were priced based on size, yield. This price already. It wasn't that he picked out the price. This was already an established market price. This is the minhag in many places that you're buying a real estate, a field. It's based on the size of the field. That's it. So much per acre, so much per dunam, whatever it might be. That's the way fields are sold. However, Chazal want to tell us, B'tzia tells us that Ephron this was his opening price. This was his opening bid. So he picks an exorbitant price. The Avram benidvat liba shamav asar kitzonav igdil. Avram showed that he was above this whole thing. He wasn't interested in haggling. He immediately accepted the first price. Al derech hapshat eretz 400 shekel kesef shekanu sabekach Ephron oavatov kedumim. Ramban says, but if you really want what I think the pshat is why does he give it that value? Because that was the value that his ancestors or he had paid for this field. So that was the value he gave it. He assigned it and said, fine, that's what it's worth. And then Avram buries Sarah, and again, it gives all of the borders. It says Maratz Machpelah, Hebron, Eretz Canaan, Kishav Levaer Hasodev Amakom V'Aretz. Again, the pasuk repeats the field, where it's located, what land it's located in, Bavur ki kol parshas shiur b'nei chet v'efron achiti. Since the whole parsha tells us that who owns it, a Chitite owns it. So we want to make sure we understand that even though it's not in the land that's called Eretz Hachitim, it's in the land of Canaan, Asher Eretz Yisrael. So that we should know where it is. That's in the beginning of the parsha. It tells us where did Sarah die. Why again all of these things of Kiryat Arba, Chevron, Eretz Canaan mentioned again? To emphasize the fact that Sarah merited to die in Eretz Yisrael and to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. Because Chiti is one of the mishpachot of Canaan that lived in Canaan at the time, and even though it calls them Chitim throughout, not Canaanim, don't be misled into thinking it was some other land that she died in. Ulafidati, Ramban closes with fun. Fidati kitamak tuvim. Eino ela haskir ki Eretz Canaan v'lo Eretz Plishtim. The reason the Torah emphasized she's buried in Canaan is so we shouldn't think she was buried in the land of Plishtim. Ki mipnei she'amar, because we just before read the last two sections that we read about Avram being in the land of Plishtim and in Beersheba. Ki mipnei she'amar yogar Avram be'eretz Plishtim yamim rabim. V'chol migura b'aretz hahi b'grar v'nachal grar. So it seems that throughout the last period of Sarah's life, Avram is moving back and forth between Beersheba and Hebron, Plishtim, Canaan. Al Kain Hiskir ki Hebron hu be Eretz Haknani Yoshev Barahu. That Hebron is part of Eretz Canaan. Below Eretz Plishtim and Hiskar li Avram, and not in the land of Plishtim that we've been talking about that Avram was living. The Hosif, the self, and it adds in the end, Lo Dia Hamara, Shehi Besada Machpela Pnei Mamrei, Shezeh Hashem Anoda Eleh. And it adds the cave and where it's located so that people should know where it is. As we're going to see later on with Yaakov Avinu, when the children have spent the last, X years, 17 years in Egypt, he's going to very much emphasize, don't forget where the cave is. Okay, because again, they've been away from Eretz Yisrael for a period of time, might have forgotten where the cave is, didn't have their GPS turned on to Mar HaMachpelah. V'nichtava, now Ramban finally says, V'nichtava zora parsha, lo dia chasti Hashem im Avraham. This parsha is written, the reason it's written at such length is to show us how Hashem did chesed, how Hashem does great things with Avraham. Shaya Nasi Elokim Ba'aretz Asher Ba'al Gorsham. Even though he's just come to dwell here, he's already recognized as Nasi Elokim. As we see at the beginning of the parish, they refer to him as Nasi Elokim. Ephron calls him Adoni throughout. Everybody's calling him our master. In other words, he's already recognized as a person of stature. He doesn't come there with an army and say, hey, look how important I am. Doesn't blow his own horn. So even in his own lifetime, with Hashem's promise of that I'll make your name great, you'll be a blessing, is already starting to be fulfilled even in his lifetime. And also to tell us that his wife died and was buried in order to be Eretz Yisrael. The ode, ki ratzala hodienu makom kfurot ha'avot, mashar nachnu chayavim l'chaved makom kfurot avotenu ha'kedoshim. Torah also wants to establish the place where the avot are buried, because we have an obligation to properly give kavod to the place where our holy ancestors are buried. Avotenu amru. However, the Gemara in Bava Basra says shegam zeh min hanisyonot shel Avram. This whole chapter is one of Avram's tests. Shabikesh Mokom Likbor Sarah, even though he needed a place to bury Sarah, he still had to go out and negotiate it and buy it before he could even bury Sarah. It's one of the tests of Avram. And again, he doesn't complain to Hashem, just goes and does what has to be done. Okay. Brahman again closes one quick comment about Ibn Ezra. He says, I don't understand why Ibn Ezra was forced to say that the reason we have this whole long parasha is to show us the greatness of Eretz Yisrael for both the living and for the dead. The old l'kayim lo davar Hashem liot lo nachla, and also that Hashem wants Avram to begin to already realize that he's going to Eretz and inherit Eretz Yisrael by the fact that now he has a piece of property. What what is the benefit to Eretz Yisrael? That he doesn't bring Sarah somewhere else to bury her. And Hashem's promise to Avram he's going to inherit Eretz Yisrael is not talking about Marat HaMachpelah, it's talking about all of Eretz Yisrael, and it's not going to be fulfilled until many years later when Am Yisrael comes back from Egypt. So that's Ramban's approach to this whole thing. We're going to now go to Malbim. Malbim, as usual, starts with a few questions. A very, very interesting set of questions. First question. Why does he start by approaching Ibn Chet, not going directly to Ephron? If he's going to buy the property from Ephron, where does he go? Why doesn't he just go to Ephron and say, hey, I want to buy the property. What's your price? Let's get the deal done. And why does he introduce himself as a stranger and a settler who's come to live with them? After they said, hey, pick whatever kever you want, you can have it, why did he have to continue? Why didn't he just say, okay, I'll take this one and got into the deal? Why does he have to continue this whole dialogue? Why, if he only asked for the cave, did Ephron end up throwing in the field? Again, why does he use this language of yitainli? He should give to me, or yitnenli, he'll give it to me. Because it sounds like he wants it as a gift. How can he contradict himself by saying, oh, I'll pay full price for it? I want you to give me a gift, but I'll pay a full price for it. It's contradiction in terms. Why does it have to mention that when Avram is having this dialogue with Ephron, that he's in front of the Bnei Chet? Well, obviously, yes. We haven't said that they dispersed. Why would we have thought otherwise? If Ephron is willing to give it to all as a gift, why does he want him to force to pay? So lots of interesting questions that the Malbim asks. Now, some of them, if you go back to Ramban, he's already answered some of these pretty much. But Malbim is going to start off taking some similar approaches and some slight different detours from Ramban. Avram rata davka achuzat kever shu beit kvarot miyuchad el kol hamishpacha, which is very similar to what Ramban said. Avram is looking to buy specifically not just a single grave, but a family burial plot, which is very similar to what Ramban said. Generally, somebody who's just passing through and just living there for a short period of time, who's a transient, doesn't ask for a family plot. He's not planning on settling there with his family and putting down roots. He's just passing through. Oh, somebody happened to die. I got to bury him. I need a place. That Toshav, however, a person who's already lived in the city, somebody who lives in the city generally has a piece of property in the city, and if they need a burial plot, they haven't already established a burial plot, they'll take a part of their property and set it aside as a burial plot. So why is Avram saying? He's saying, up till now I've been a stranger. I don't own any property yet. Now I'm looking to switch and become a resident. To set down roots here in Bnei Beiti with my family. That's why he's saying, I'd like you to sell me a piece of property so I can have a family plot here and put down roots. Because that's what's going to happen when if I bury my wife here, obviously we're going to put down roots because they're going to want to come and visit the grave. That I should be able to build, have a plot of land for my family. And then I'll be able to bury my wife. He says specifically milfanai, in front of me. The only way I will be able to find peace with myself is by burying her in a way to know that I'm burying her in what will become a family burial plot. If not, if I can't find a burial plot to set a family plot to bury her in, I will feel that I failed her as if I haven't given her a proper burial. I haven't given her the proper respect in her burial. Ki ratza mitzad emunato shekol mishpacha yikru b'makom achad. He's looking to start that everybody should be buried in the same locale. Kinyan v'shachavti im avotai. As we see many places that it says, I will lie down with my family, with my ancestors. Okay. Mevur me'inyan parshat k'mo shekasav Ramban sheyachok v'nimus livnei chet shelo yitain achuzat kever leger habal lagur b'artzam. The generally accepted rule among the Bnei Chet at that time, the established principal law was you cannot sell a family plot to a stranger who's just coming to pass through. The lo yichach was a keverak l'toshvei haaretz v'gedolim shebahem. Not only that, even the ordinary citizens of the city, unless you were a macher, you couldn't get your own private family plot. The ordinary people, the poor people, the ordinary working class, those that came to dwell, they were buried in the community cemetery. They didn't have their own family plots. The established law amongst the Bnei Chet cannot sell a property to be used as a cemetery, a family plot. Oh, can't do it. Only people who are natives can get a family plot. Therefore, because of this statute, the way that, or at least that this was the accepted custom, they answer, sorry, we can't give you a burial plot. We can give you a grave, no problem. Nobody will say you can't get a burial plot, but we can't give you a family place for a family burial plot. We'll give you a grave, no problem. So they were not able to fulfill his request. They can't give him a family plot. Therefore, listen carefully. Not just listen to what we're saying, but read between the lines too. Don't think that we don't want to respect your wishes. We have great respect for you. Don't think that we don't respect you. Okay, that's why they start with Shmeinu Adoni, our master. Okay, they want them to understand they respect you, but nonetheless, we can't change the law. The law is the law. We certainly respect you, but law is the law. The law, the established law is you can't sell a family burial plot to somebody who's not a native. Can't be done. But you do have a choice. They give him the option of burying him in any grave. A single grave we'll be glad to give you anywhere you want. The best, you can choose the best. And if you want to bury it in the communal cemetery, you can pick the best plot you want there too. Doesn't matter. If you want to bury it in somebody else's family plot or somebody else's cemetery, nobody will hold you back if all you're looking for is a single grave. No problem. That's what we will do for you. That's the best we can do for you. The law says we can't sell you a family plot. Sorry. That's the rule. And that's why he said, it doesn't matter whether it's because of you or even giving. We want to give the person who's passed away the proper burial, but we can't overrule the law. That's why it says before meitecha. They were certainly agreed to let him bury Sarah, but they would not allow him to buy a family plot. You're not a native here. You can't buy and establish a family burial plot. That's how they start out. Okay, that's their opening position. So Avram now goes back and says, okay, Avram. He says, well, let me meet with this Ephron guy. Why? Avram is looking for a loophole so that he can get around this law of that he's not allowed to buy a family burial plot. If you want to allow me to bury my dead with proper respect, again explains to him. If he cannot bury her in a family plot, it's as if he hasn't buried her. So this is the advice he suggests. You tell me that you have this established principle that a stranger can't buy a family burial plot. There's only two rationales for such a law. Perhaps the reason is because strangers aren't allowed to buy property to begin with. Is that possibly the reason? Like we say in Shechem, when the brothers, when Shechem comes or Hamor comes to the brothers after he's kidnapped Dinah, he says, "Well, we'll let you join us, and you'll be able to even own property," which they couldn't do before that. Because again, so I'm sorry, Malam is giving a proof that normally you're not a native, you're not allowed to buy property. That's part of the rules. A normal, ordinary person who's coming in as a stranger, not a native, can't buy property. Because anytime property comes up for sale, the natives get priority. And that's so Avram says, because the whole reason that you don't want to allow me to buy a family plot is because I'm not allowed to buy property. So what he says, I got a chill for you. Let him give it to me as a gift. Because once you have a gift, you can't say, well, the natives get priority because I can give a gift to whoever I want. You can say, okay, when it comes to a sale, I have to give precedence to the people who come because if they're going to match the price. But when it comes to giving a gift, you can't tell me, oh, you can only give your gift to a native person, native of the city. You can't give your gift to a stranger. Okay? I can give a gift to whoever I want. I can't say, oh no, you're only allowed to give gifts to natives. You give a gift because you want to give a gift to somebody. So he says, one possibility is you don't want to allow me to purchase land. So I'll give you an eitzah. Give it to me as a gift. I'll pay you on the side for the gift, but give it to me as a gift. Yeshlo, now second possibility, why shall I have takana hirak alachuza kever? It's only on burial plots. You don't want to give a stranger such a great honor of being able to bury their dead. But he's got to bury it in the town burial. He doesn't get his own. A stranger doesn't have the privilege of having his own personal family plot. It's only given to the people who are up there. And if you tell me that, then I can buy another piece of property. So I'll buy another piece of property. So you can't give me a burial plot as a gift because I'm not allowed to have a burial gift because I'm not honorable high enough. Now, I gave you two reasons why there might be a law that I'm not allowed to buy property, right? One is because I'm not allowed to buy property as a stranger. The other is because I'm not allowed to buy a family plot because I have to be somebody as a macher to have that. So now there's a doubt as to why this law exists. So now what does Avram say? Yesh reshut biyad moshel haaretz. Whoever is the head of the town council, the leader, who was the interpreter of laws. Oh, excuse me for 1 minute. Hold on. Hold on. 1 minute, please. I have to make a quick phone. I have to quickly make a phone call here. Remind my wife something is not to lose track of time. Give me a minute. I apologize for the pause here, ladies and gentlemen. I'll be right back. Hi, it's 10 to 9. All right, bye. Okay. Well, that's why he bought the whole field. Okay. Yes, so he can do perush letakanazo ketobeinah. Now that I've given you two possible reasons why this law exists, Avram says, whoever's in charge can interpret it whichever way he wants. Therefore, he says, so again, he's acting and trying to tell them how to run their laws. Let's meet this Ephron. Why? Ephron, who has shofet, he's the judicial system, he's the judge here. He can explain that it's like the first reason. The reason we have this law that a stranger isn't allowed to buy property is because we always have to give first priority to natives. Okay, so if that's the case, so now he can give me this cave as a gift. So therefore he says, now that I've given you a loophole, let Ephron give this to me as a gift. Specifically, since it's at the end of his field, it doesn't even impair the value of his field. That he shouldn't sell his main field to a stranger isn't possible because we're not talking about selling the field. I'm going to leave the field in his possession. The cave is only a small portion of the field in the corner. And then he says, even so, I'll pay full price. I'll give him a gift back of money. Nice way to do this. What is he trying to say? I'll give him a nice full cash gift to even it out. So he doesn't lose anything. He gives me a gift of the cave. He gets to keep his whole field, and he gets to go whole. I'll give him a cash gift equal to the value of the whole field. Please give it to me in your midst. Why say b'tochchem in front of you? He wants him to give it as a gift. Now that he's giving it as a gift, he's circumvented this law that he can't sell property to a stranger. I'm going to use it as a burial place. Once I've got it as a gift, I can do whatever I want with it. As long as the people agree that Ephron is interpreting the law correctly. Ephron is the one who has the ability to interpret the law into the way to his benefit. And that's why he never uses the word sale. It's always a gift that Avram is going to give him back a gift. I just realized how late it is, that my time is basically up. But basically, Malvin continues in the same event that ultimately Ephron says, okay, well, but in the end, I'm going to do it the other way around. I'll sell you the whole field because I'm interpreting it that way, that I'm allowed to sell you a whole field. And once I've sold, I can't sell you a burial plot, but once I sell you the field, you can do whatever you want with it. And that's basically what he says. I wanted to close with one very, very brief thought here. I hope I still have it in front of me here. I always find it interesting that there are two parashot that have the word Chayim in them, Chayay Sara and Vayechi, and in both of them we talk about death of tzaddikim. We talk about the death of Yaakov Avinu and Yosef and Vayechi. We talk about the death of Avraham and Sarah in Parsha of Chayay Sara. And I just want to quote it very briefly. If I don't have it here, where'd it go? Where did it disappear to? Very brief Gemara in Brachot that tells us that I think connects why these parashot have the word Chayim in them. If I can find it, I apologize. That's always taken me time to find where I have. I don't have a bookmark. No, it's not here. Here we go. Gemara in Brachot tells us very simply that we have a pasuk in Kohelet that says, "Ki hachayim yodim sheyamutu." The living know that they're going to die. Who is that referring to? Elu tzadikim. This refers to the righteous. Sheba mitatan nikru chayim. That even after they're dead are still called alive. V'meitim einam yodim muma. The dead don't know, understand anything. Elu rishayim. This refers to the wicked. Sheba chayim kruim meitim. And even when they're alive, are still considered as if they're dead. And I think it's very interesting that the Torah really is telling us that by giving us the name of Chaim to these two parsha where we talk about the death of these tzaddikim, because in reality, if we think about it, it's connected to the concept of Chaim, is connected to the Torah, which is our lives. We say it's Chaim the Torah is life. So those who grab onto the Torah while they're alive are always alive. Even when they are no longer in this world, they are still alive. And those that don't have never been alive in the first place. So I just thought I always find that a very interesting thought on the parsha. And I hope that you got something out of tonight's shiur. I hope we will able to someday be able to all be back b'chayim in the eternal life. And we should be zochet to Gula Shleimim Heri Yameinu. Thank you all, and I open up now for questions, comments, or feedback. Anybody?
So why do they name a very sick person Chaim?
Why does the person who is sick get a name changed which might be Chaim? It could be anything. Usually it could be Baruch, Chaim, something like that. Because again, the reason we change a person's name when they're ill is very simply because we say, if the person, if the old name had a gezerah in Shemayim that they were going to have this calamity happen to them, the new person should not have that gezerah applied to them. That's why we change a person's name. Why we choose Chaim or Bracha? Because those are good names to choose. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Have a good rest of the week, everyone.